Hi, I'm Abilash Soundararajan, founder and CEO of PriusAPN. We are a privacy engineering company. Businesses across the country are very interested in understanding about the bill and what are the bare minimal essentials that they have to take care of in terms of meeting as regulatory obligations. So, in this quick video, we are going to quickly look into what are the bare minimal requirements, what are the penalty clauses, and how should businesses prepare to ensure that they meet these bare minimal requirements so that they are meeting the regulatory requirements. First requirement, which is of the maximum penalty, which is 250 crore, is the data breach if it happens on personal data and organizations have not taken corresponding reasonable security safeguards in place for personal data. What that actually means is that you need to put in place the appropriate safeguards in terms of privacy for protecting personal data. For example, you have to do data minimization and ensure that only right amount of data is shared for different purposes. For example, if anonymous data will meet your requirement, then you should use anonymous data for storing, sharing, processing data in specific scenarios. For example, you are giving data to analytics to a third party and the data gets breached in the third party ecosystem, also you are responsible. So you have to ensure that when you are giving data to external parties, even internal parties who are doing analytics on data, it is not beyond consent. It is within consent, and you put necessary security safeguards in that in terms of pseudonymization or anonymization, which can significantly reduce the risk, hence reduce your um, uh, obligations or the penalty which may accrue if the data gets breached. Second one is very interesting and very important. Second one is, if there were a data breach, unfortunately, it is the obligation or responsibility of the data fiduciary or the organization to communicate it to the data protection board, saying, hey, there was a data breach and these were the data principals whose data were impacted, and we are working on solving those issues, and we are also intimating the same to the data principals, which are basically your customers or data subjects. You need to have a framework in place. Uh, if you don't do this, if there is a breach that you are aware of and you don't let the corresponding board or authority be aware of this, and the data subjects aware of it, if you are not making it available to them, then there can be a penalty of up to 200 crore. So prevention is better than cure, and it's always recommended that you implement the safeguards which were recommended in the first place, so that it does not result in breach and subsequent breach notification, etc. Yeah, the third penalty clause is for children's personal data. So if you are collecting children's data and you are processing children's data, it is very, very sensitive. You need to ensure that you have consent in place for that from corresponding guardians. If you don't take consents, and consent is required to be provable, not just for children's data, for any other data as well, where if this is taken to court, then you should be able to prove that you actually took the consent from your data principal or data subject or your customer, and he actually agreed for it, you mutually agreed for processing of data for a specific purpose, and then you should be able to legally prove it downstream as well. So this is a mandatory requirement. So probably things like digital signature can be helpful, but this is very, very critical, and especially in terms of children's data. For other data, in case of breach and all, there is a specific clause breaches, it's only 50 crore penalty, but if it is children's data, then the penalty can go up to 200 crore per instance. Yeah, point number 4, or the fourth penalty clause, is data protection impact assessment and the importance of it for significant data fiduciary. Now, what is the definition of significant data fiduciary is a separate clause. We'll not go deep into it, we'll cover it in a different um, uh, context. But if you are processing large volume of data, or if the harm which can accrue to the data subject can be very high, or it can impact national security or democracy or things like those, then by nature you are classified under significant data fiduciary. So if you are processing, let's say, a volume of more than 10 lakh user data, then probably there is a high probability of you getting classified under significant data fiduciary. And for this, for every flow of data that you are taking, from, let us say, a data set. You are allowing the data to be processed by for some purpose, for a specific period of time, or you are sharing with third party. For each of these instance of data flow, you have to do something called data protection impact assessment, which has to be approved by the DPO, understanding the risk in data, potential impact on the citizens, the requirement of business, concern provided, the proportionality of it, and take a decision on whether to allow the data flow to happen or not. If you don't do this data protection impact assessment, per instance, the penalty can go up to 150 crore, which is very, very significant. Penalty clause number 5 is very interesting. It is not for the organizations, but this is rather for the citizens or the data subjects. It is very interesting that we have a GDPR does not have something like this, but we have something like this even for citizens as a responsibility. The reason being that there are grievance frameworks in place, data correctness requirements for the data process or the data fiduciary. At the same time, the data is being provided by the citizen, or the grievance is being reported by the citizen. This aspect is there to ensure that it doesn't become a nuisance or people don't abuse this. So if there is grievance is being misused, or inappropriately used, or somebody is trying to impersonate by giving wrong personal information, then this clause applies, where that penalty can be up to 10,000 rupees per individual. Point number 6 is very interesting and very important. For example, US recently did something called voluntary undertaking for ethical AI practices. So this is sort of grounded in this regulation, clause 6 of penalty, where they speak about voluntary commitments, which organizations can give to the board, can be asked to give to the board. If a commitment has been made but it was not incorporated by an organization, then there can be a proportionate penalty um, directed by the board on the organization. So it is important that you take care of your obligations the right way. Primarily, it would be like uh, putting safeguards, better safeguards, sharing data in the right way. For example, AI can also be brought in this context, where if you're training AI models on data, ensure that it's not personal, it's not memorizing information, it's not giving information which is sensitive, things like those, which can be very, very important. And our regulation is more based on harm, loss, and gain for individuals or organizations. So whenever it is related to loss or gain and you are using data, there is a higher obligation in these cases, especially you are doing at population scale. So this can be a critical requirement there. The last clause on penalty is for everything else. Whatever we have covered till now are the major points. Any other point which is considered as a breach of act by the data fiduciary, those fall under this, and the penalty for each of those misses is 50 crore. Now, some of the critical requirements are: you need to provide notice to the data subject while you are about to collect information. Your consent needs to be specific, and it needs to be provable. When you are actually showcasing it, it should be withdrawable. User has the right to access for information, where he can ask, where and all are you storing my data, who and all are using my data, what are the purpose for which you are using my data. Then yeah, in terms of erasure, data subject has the right to request you to delete his data, withdraw his consent. So these are very foundational, and there is a huge list, larger list as well. But at the high level, these are some things which are very, very critical for an organization to follow. So if you don't do this, then this will result in a penalty of 50 crore per instance per clause, so which is very significant. These are some very bare essential requirements that organizations have to follow uh, to ensure that you start your privacy journey. Hope you find this useful. If you require any help in designing your privacy journey, doing data protection impact assessment, or privacy preservation and technical safeguards, reach out to PriusAPN. Thank you.